Hi, my name's Wayne. I'm a second year undergraduate student at the University of Hertfordshire studying astrophysics. I've transferred into the second year from another university where I was studying maths and physics, and I'm doing quite well here at the moment, and I'm predicted a first, just coming up to my second year exams now. But my reason for transferring from the previous university was because I had quite a lot of difficulties with my study, having been diagnosed sort of 2 years ago with dyslexia. Now, I've been back in education now for about 5 years, and this came as a bit of a shock, really. And what it's actually meant is I've had to relearn how to learn in a lot of cases. I've had to change my study methods and so on. And as part of this, I found out that having notes in advance of lectures actually plays a very, very crucial part of me being able to understand the material that's provided. Now, with my dyslexia, it's not the sort of stereotypical word jumbling which a lot of people associate. With me, it's primarily based upon reading processing speed and actual reading processing itself. And what I find is that when I actually read something, I will have to read it many, many times to be able to process it, particularly if I'm actually under pressure. So in an exam environment, for instance, I may have to read something 15 or 20 times. I also get very, very fatigued when I'm reading, so reading any large volume of texts, I very quickly start to switch off and can't actually focus or remember what I'm reading. My writing speed, accuracy and legibility is also poor, and this actually makes it difficult to take notes in lectures. As a consequence of this, I've actually been given a smart pen which lets me record the lectures, and I find that very useful. The other thing is that my working memory is poor as well, and this impacts in lectures by making it difficult for me to actually remember what's been said for long periods of time, so I have to get it down very quickly. I've had very good support from universities in general, but at UH I've had very good support. I find the staff here extremely helpful, and the Disabled Students Allowances have given me some funding for various hardware and software, which has also been good. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a bit about what it's like for me before a lecture when I actually have notes available. Ordinarily what I'll do is I'll read the notes beforehand to familiarise myself with them and to process the contents of the notes. As I've said before, this is the bit that actually takes me the longest amount of time, actually processing the written material. I use this to get the big picture, and then, as I said before, to fill in the details, but it's to check my understanding of the prerequisites. So if I realise that I don't quite understand something from previously, I'll go back to previous notes or to a textbook to actually read up on that particular piece of information and make sure that I understand it fully. All of this actually helps me to actually feel prepared for the lecture, and consequently what it means is I can also prepare questions for the lecturer, and I can also feel that I'm participating actually in the lecture itself. Now, when I actually attend the lecture, I don't actually have to read the slides and process the material that's actually on the slides. I can just skim through them and just think, well, I'm familiar with that already, I've read it, I know what this section is going to be about. So what that means is I can then listen to the lecturer properly. I can give him my full attention, what he's saying, what he's writing, and I can make additional notes on what he's saying, what he's writing on the board, and so on. So I suppose the difference here is that I can actually focus on the understanding of what's being said, rather than just getting written words down on paper, copying stuff down. This all helps me to relax, and as I said, I think it makes the whole lecture a lot more enjoyable. After the lecture, what I'll do is I'll consolidate my notes from the actual slides themselves, from any notes that I've taken from the actual lecture that I've written using my smart pen. I'll perhaps listen back to recordings on my smart pen to get anything else that I may have missed, and I'll also look at additional sources and add in extra bits and pieces from there. I'll then use this to help my understanding, and then actually do the tutorial work as well. Before the next lecture, I'll revise the previous notes, usually well, I tend to do it the day before, but sometimes it's the morning before, so it's very fresh. And also I download any other notes that come up for the next lecture and then read and process those as before. Now, when I don't actually have any notes, there's quite a difference. I'll go into the lecture not being prepared at all. I haven't seen what's going to be coming up, so I don't know the topic necessarily. The lecturer may have mentioned it in the previous lecture, but more often than not, this is not the case. So I haven't had time to actually, or not time, sorry, I haven't had the ability to actually look into texts, to read around a bit, to find out what I should be learning. I've got no idea of the actual big picture, so the structure of the lecture itself. This is very important to me. If I don't get the bigger picture and what was the general sort of topic, I find it very hard to actually take in and understand the smaller pieces and how they fit in to the overall big picture. This all can make me feel very stressed at times, and because I'm unprepared, and obviously when you feel stressed, it then makes it more difficult to focus on what you're doing. You're then stressed about getting writing everything down, all this sort of thing, and it takes away from the enjoyment of the actual lecture itself. I will actually read any previous notes that I've had before the lecture, but again, this just serves to reinforce what we've already done rather than what we're going to be doing. Now, when I attend that lecture, I have to read and process the slides. As I've mentioned before, this is very difficult, and it's something that I have to concentrate extremely hard on, and it takes up my whole concentration. I can't do anything else other than this. I can do that, or I can copy the slides down, or I can listen to the lecture and make notes. But as I said before, I can only do one of these. With the Smart Pen, I can record and listen back, so technically I can do 2, but that's still only 2 out of 3. Generally what I'll try and do, if I'm not going to be able to get the notes for a while, is I'll try and copy the notes down, or as much as I can, and then listen to, and then actually use the audio to actually record the lecturer, and then listen back to it and try and hope that I actually understand what he's saying just from the audio. But there's a lot lost in this. I feel during the lecture I'm pressured to understand there and then, and from written material particularly, this is very, very difficult for me. But you know, having time to actually process things in your own time is really, really key. I think particularly to somebody such as myself with learning difficulties, you need time to process things. You need time to think about it from perhaps a slightly different way, go and look at another source, do some cross-referencing. And you just don't get this when you're just presented with the information there and then. And as I've said several times now, I can't contribute. I can't actually listen to what the lecturer is saying. And what that means is I'll actually miss questions that are asked. So I may realise that there's a pause and that he's waiting for a question to be answered. And ordinarily I'd be very happy to contribute and actually answer the question, but I won't have actually heard the question because I'm busy writing things down. And so I just sit there. You know, a lot of perhaps other people won't answer either, but I just feel that I can't contribute then, and I do enjoy contributing in lectures. Consequently, from all of this, in a lecture where I've not had notes, I feel like I'm playing catch-up all the time. So I'm constantly just looking for the breaks when there's a break in the speaking and so on, to actually try and catch up with the writing, try and get down what I can. This, compounded with my my short-term memory problems, or working memory, whatever you want to call it, means that I will forget things. So I can only remember a certain number of things before writing them down. So I won't necessarily get all the lecture down. After the lecture, I've got limited notes to work with. So I haven't got the full sheet of the slides, and then the comprehensive notes taken during the lecture. This means that I have to spend a long time trying to find information from other sources, and then actually reading whole sections, perhaps, of a book. Whereas if I have slightly more specific areas to look at, I can focus on those. And this whole thing is very time consuming. As I've said, reading large volumes of text takes me a very, very long time. I generally feel that I understand things a lot less when I actually don't have notes beforehand and have this whole ability to process things beforehand as well. and this consequently makes tutorial work a lot harder to do. And what I've found in the past actually is that I can end up feeling like I'm actually working just to answer questions rather than actually working to understand and then actually answering questions. So I'll get to the point where I think I've got my tutorial work to do but I don't have time. What do I do? Do I learn and understand the material? Do I do the lecture questions? Do I do the tutorial questions? And I'll actually just work to answer the questions instead because it feels like being productive. But that's the difference between the two, when I have notes and when I don't have notes.